Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Fishing with Rod. If you're new around here, my name is Rod and I make educational and entertaining videos on fishing right across British Columbia. So if you enjoy the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and there'll be many more to come. In this particular video, it's more geared towards new anglers, new salmon anglers particularly. I want to talk about fishing rods. I thought I'd put out this video. This is a pretty elementary video for beginner anglers. Let's say if you're just getting into fishing, you don't know what to buy, you go into the fishing store. It's quite intimidating. You have so many rods to choose from. Just for salmon and steelhead fishing, for every brand, there's roughly around 2,000 different options you can choose from. So, what do you choose? So hopefully this video will break it down a little bit so you can, go into the shop with some background information already, and then you can kind of look around and pick out the rods that you think is right for you. So these videos are sponsored by Shimano and G.Loomis, so those are the rods we'll be going to be talking about, but you can apply this information to any kinds of rods that you like to use, so just be aware of that. So let's talk about length to begin with. We're gonna focus on float fishing mostly in this video. A typical rod that's used is a baitcasting rod, which has a trigger seat like this one, trigger reel seat, and we tend to go with a pretty long rod, so anywhere from 9 feet long to 10.5 feet, which is a pretty typical length, to even longer, 11, 13 feet sometimes. But 10.5, it's usually a good length to go with. You want a fishing rod that's long enough to keep your line off the water when you're float fishing. That's a lot easier for line controlling, for setting the hook. But for someone who's short like me, sometimes a little shorter rod is actually pretty nice to use, especially if you're fishing in a smaller river. So what I find is that if you have a pretty long rod and if you're short and have short arms, and it's really hard to land the fish when the rod's really long. But if you have a pretty short rod, it's much easier to control. But you don't want to go too short, because then it makes it hard to float fish as well. So I'm gonna pick this one right here. This is a new Shimano Compre series just came out, and it's there to replace the Convergence and Clara series, and it's really nice. I've really enjoyed it. This particular model, it's 8.5 feet long, and it's a cute little rod, and it's long enough for float fishing. And look how short it is when you break it down into two. It's pretty short, and you can also use this for casting spoons and spinners as well. And you know what? If when my kids want to get into salmon fishing, this would be the rod that I would choose as well. Something that's longer, heavier, it's just too much for them to handle. But a short one like this would be really nice, and it's really light as well. Look how this is really nice, and just like I said, just break it down really nicely. So that's 9.5. Here we have I have a 9 feet long, so half a foot longer as well. This is a Shimano Technium. Shimano just relaunched the Technium series, and it just came out, and it's the quality. So Compre, it's kind of like the entry-level rods. So these ones retail around $150. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. And these ones are, I think they're twice as much, or maybe $250 to $300. So yeah, so this is a 9 foot long, and then we have going up to 10.5 feet, which is what I mentioned that earlier, which is a standard float fishing rod setup. So different lengths, just really depends on the type of water that you're fishing in, and your height, and the length of your arms as well. So if you stick to around that, it should be all right. Don't go below 8.5. Don't go down to 6 feet. Don't use a 6 feet bait casting rod for float fishing. It's not gonna work very well. So the next one we're gonna talk about is the power of the rod. So when you look at the labels on the rod, it says, so this one is power medium. So it's rated between 8 and 12 pounds. And then you have this 10.5 feet long Technium. This one is rated between 12 and 20 pounds. And this power is medium as well. And then we go up here to, this is a G.Loomis IMX Pro. This is, but we'll come back to this. This is my favorite rod to use right now. This is 10 to 20 pound rating, and it's rated heavy, power heavy. So the heavier it is, the bigger fish it can handle. So 8 to 12 pound will be great for coho salmon. It's a little light for chinook salmon. You can handle chinook salmon to a certain size, but anything bigger than 20 pound, 15 to 20 pound, it's gonna be quite tough on this short 8.5 feet, 8 to 12 pound test rod. So you wanna go up a little bit. So this one right here, 12 to 20 pound Technium, this one will handle chinook salmon just fine. It can handle coho salmon for sure, but the smaller coho might not be as fun when you use this rod right here. Let's talk about the G.Loomis rod, why I like it so much. This IMX Pro steelhead, that just came out just over a year ago. It's really light. It's so one thing about it. So this IMX Pro costs a lot more than the other rods, and there's a reason for that. So it's very enjoyable to use. It's very light. And even though it's rated between 10 and 20 pounds, it's rated heavy. I actually enjoy using this for coho salmon a lot. Even right now, I'm targeting coho with this rod, and it feels, it handles chinook salmon just fine, but it feels great catching even small coho on this rod. So it's a really, even though it's more expensive, it covers a good range of species, target species. So if you want to invest on one fishing rod, this one would be good to go with, but it really depends on your budget. So for example, this Compre, Shimano Compre, is also rated between 12 and 20 pound test. And if you don't want to spend too much, you just want to get into it, you don't want to spend too much on fishing, $150, get you this rod, and this can cover all the species, even though the smaller coho salmon won't feel as good when you're fighting it, but you'll get the job done, and you can land big chinook salmon on this particular rod as well. So you don't have to spend a whole lot to catch fish, but the more you spend, it's definitely it's more of a luxury, right? So the more you spend, you know, on the lighter fishing rod, it's easier on your arms. The fight feels better. So this is not an entry-level rod. So if you're getting into fishing more and more, you might want to start investing on more expensive items like this one right here. I want to talk about this particular one right here. I've had this rod for about, I'm going to say about 8 years now. So this is also a G.Loomis. This is the IMX. It's rated between 6 and 12 pounds. It's super light, 6 to 12 pound test. It's a fantastic coho fishing rod and also pink salmon. But getting a chinook salmon on this particular rod is a nightmare. I can land it up to a certain point, about 15 pounds, but any bigger than that, it's pretty hard to land fish with this particular rod. So it's a pretty specialty setup. It's more for smaller fish. So like I say, on coho salmon, this rod is really enjoyable. I'll only take it out if I know I'm targeting there's any coho salmon around. There's absolutely no chinook salmon around. This particular rod is really enjoyable to use. 10.5 feet long as well. And again, the weight is also very, very light. And yeah, very enjoyable rod to use on coho salmon. But when you get into a bigger fish like chinook salmon and chum salmon, it can be, yeah, it can ruin your day actually. So I would stay away from that on bigger fish. So let's talk about the action of the rod. How is that different to the power of the rod? So the action is rated, so for example, it's fast. So there's a term, So for this particular rod, the 8.5 feet long, it's a pretty light rod, but it's a fast rod, meaning that it's quite stiff. It's not very flexible. So one good thing about the fast rod like this, especially a short one like this, it'll be good for casting spoons and spinners as well. So not only for flow fishing, because it's how fast it reacts, it's really good for casting lures with this rod. If we go down to something like this one right here, the one I just talked about, the G.Loomis rated between 6 and 12, the 12-pound test, the light rod. This is a moderate action rod, so it's a lot more flexible. So this particular fishing rod bends really easily, and it just responds a lot more slowly. And don't cast lures with this rod. It makes the fight a lot more enjoyable, a lot more fun, and it just takes a lot longer to land the fish as well. That's why it's a slower rod. Do we have these are moderate, I believe. No, this one. So this IMX Pro, rated between 10 and 20 pound. It's a fast fishing rod. So this is a pretty stiff rod, but like I said, it's a pretty expensive rod. It responds pretty fast, but at the same time, it's also very enjoyable to cast, to fight fish as well. So it's yeah. So like I said, I have nothing bad to say about this. It is a pretty pricey rod, but if you want to treat yourself, this will be a good one to go with. Yeah, so you got fast, moderate, but there's also something called for the action, there's also slow as well, which is very, very flexible. And I would say you won't find that very much for salmon fishing. Most of the rods are rated moderate to fast. This particular technium is also a fast action one. So this is a 9-foot long technium. It's also, being fast. You can also use this for casting spoons and spinners. If you don't want to, so let's say if you take this out and do some flow fishing, and all of a sudden you want to switch to casting spoons and spinners, you can just cut everything out, cut the line off, and put lure on it and cast it out for cast and retrieve lures, or you can cast a spoon out, let it swing across. That's very quite commonly used for steelhead and coho salmon. So there you go. So this is just a really fast video I want to put out to kind of provide an overview on all the different salmon bait casting rods that you can use for flow fishing, so you won't be as overwhelmed by the amount of selections available out there. And if you have any other questions regarding this, hopefully I have kind of explained it pretty well for you. But if you have any other questions, make sure you leave a comment on the bottom. I'm always happy to answer them. Hopefully you can go out and find the right fishing rod for you to catch a nice salmon this fall. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you find it useful. And until next time, good luck fishing.